Abe was really, in many ways, a very, very imaginative, not just a politician, not even a leader, I would say he was a very imaginative strategist. So, the point I wish to make was that if one looked 20 odd years ago at anybody in the academic world, in the political world, in the thinking world, Abe stood out as the person who actually got this right and who got this the earliest. And therein actually lay the importance of the proposal that he made to create a Quad. And again, if you see the Quad idea and his vision, the confluence of two seas that Sanjay spoke about, the perception of the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean as a seamless theatre goes side by side with this beyond alliance thinking. Because the fact is, the sharp compartmentalization between the Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean happened in a world of super alliances. It was a post-1945 very sharp divide. When the United States actually, because of its own architecturing of the world, took a particular theatre of primacy, which for it was the Pacific, and in a sense distanced it from other contiguous regions. And in that sense, by proposing an Indo-Pacific, by suggesting a Quad, by getting both sides, East Asia thinking about South Asia, South Asia thinking about East Asia, Abe was really, in many ways, a very, very imaginative, not just a politician, not even a leader, I would say he was a very imaginative strategist. Now, bear in mind, he sort of pinged this idea on an India which had done by now a decade of Look East, and the Look East had gone beyond. The Look East had opened up other relationships. So you have today, or not today, at that point when he did it, an India now whose relationship with Japan, with Korea, had got far more active at that point of time. I would say the first decade of this century is really the decade where conceptual experimentation or thinking happened, which was led by Abe. Now, we all like to define inflection points in every relationship, and usually this makes for a big, very interesting debate, because most of us want the inflection point to be the one where we were there. It's a very human way of writing or thinking about history. But here is the issue. The first decade of this century for India was a very active decade. You had all these developments I'm telling you about Japan. You had the nuclear deal with the US. You actually had a kind of making peace with Australia. And other developments as well. But then, if one looks by the second decade, each one of these, if it is not frittered away, it has certainly plateaued. So the liability issue kind of took the gas out of the nuclear deal. The failure of the Quad, the first Quad, actually dampened this set of initiatives, and it also was aggravated by the fact that Abe himself was no longer the Prime Minister. So if you look by the middle of the next decade, actually it was once again the takeoff started, and then somewhere there was a flattening out. So it's now very interesting then to look at the last decade. And the last decade and this is now Abe's sort of second bite of the apple. This is a time now where he actually has a long run and a much more confident run. And I forget whose article, they spoke about a reborn, I think it was Taniguchi. One of the articles in the book speaks about Abe actually being reborn as Taniguchi. Right. So Now you have an Abe much more determined, much more experienced in a way. The global situation has changed. There is now an Obama presidency with all its attendant complications. And here there is now a new logic, a stronger logic to pick up on what was tried in the first decade. And if one looks at it, this time around, Abe has a counterpart. And the same description that I used, optimism and realism, international and national, technology-driven and cultural. So what do you get? You get a bullet train project. You get defense agreements. You get actually a nuclear agreement, and that is, for those of you who are familiar with Japan will understand, how sensitive and difficult it is. And I think Ambassador Suzuki was present at some of the more testing moments of that negotiation. You have a big spike in investment because the Japanese are now responding to easier to do business. You have actually now an agreement for Indians to work in particular professions which have been identified in Japan.